All right, so we have started. All right, hello everyone. We will be presenting on the Library of Congress Children's Subject Headings list. Our group presenters include myself, Katrina Ferris, Mariah Martin, and Corbin Harris. I will begin by introducing the Children's and Young Adults Cataloging Program, also known as the CYAC program. The intended purpose for this cataloging standard. The CYAC standards were designed to better serve the cataloging needs of the children and young adults who use these materials, as well as librarians, teachers, and parents. The Library of Congress started using the Children's Subject Headings list, originating as the Annotated Card, or AC program, to provide age-appropriate cataloging standards to children and young adult materials. Some notable differences between the AC program and the Library of Congress Subject Heading List, or LCSH, is that the AC program includes book summaries and physical descriptions of an item. The top book, titled Terrible, Horrible Eddie by E.C. Spikeman, shows an example of including a book summary in this item's metadata. The book summary would be found in the 520 field and should contain the following. It should have present tense and active voice, mention the name and age of the main character, as well as the setting, time period, and key plot points, use language that reflects the work without giving away too much, and the length should be about 25 to 30 words, preferably in one sentence. The bottom image shows the book My Wrench by Lynn Sandow and Jody Wheeler. This book shows an example of the benefit of using physical description in an item's metadata. The physical description will be found in the 500s field, and you can follow the blue link at the bottom of the page to see a more in-depth example of descriptive cataloging suggestions for children and youth materials. This slide shows the types of materials that are in scope to be cataloged under the CYAC program. The first list on the right side lists the types of materials that fall under the program's scope. Under the green check mark on the left side, I have some examples of what some of those materials could look like. The second list on the right side lists the types of materials that are not covered by the scope of the program. Under the red X, I have some examples of items that fall into those categories. Some things that catalogers consider when determining if a book falls under the scope are: is the book written or marketed towards children and youths? What is the reading level? Is the book illustrated, or is the information being presented in a way that is geared towards children? And is the tone of the work educational or scholarly? Most of the answers to these questions can be found in the information that the publisher provides. When making that determination, it is also important for catalogers to consider whether this material was written about children for adults rather than for children. History of development. In 1965, after receiving requests from librarians for children and youth materials, the Library of Congress responded by creating the Children's Subject Headings list. The standard was first called the Annotated Card Program, or the AC program. What made the AC program stand out at the time was the fact that it standardized putting book summaries or book annotations and the subject headings on the print cataloging cards for juvenile materials. Developmental milestones. To reiterate, we have the AC program being created in 1965 by the Library of Congress after receiving requests from librarians for children and youth materials. In 1969, the first edition of the Subject Headings for Children's Literature was published. This list provided the guidelines and reasoning for separating subject headings for children from the current LCSH list. Members from the ALA Committee on Cataloging of Children's Materials met to consider the problems due to lack of uniformity when cataloging children's materials. And in 1969, the committee recommended adopting the LOC cataloging of children's materials as a national standard. In 1996, the AC list was converted to individual authority records in Mark 21 formatting. Headings and subject headings had been modified to fit the CYAC guidelines for use of children, so the authority records needed to match the unique modifiers for children's cataloging. And in 2010, the AC program was officially renamed the Children's and Young Adults Cataloging Program, or the CYAC program, and continuously monitors policies and best practices to ensure age-appropriate access to juvenile literature.
guys, so my part of the presentation is going to be current implementation of CYAC. So some of the key practices on the next slide I'll show is number one, creating bibliographic records. Within this process, it includes assigning appropriate subject headings, providing a link to authority records, and the goal of this is to ensure access through the subject organization. Now, number two, following subject heading policies, they must adhere to the LCSH standards. Consistency is key to make sure it is able to be uniform, which allows reliable search results for all users. Number three, maintaining authority records. Regular checks for accuracy and making sure outdated information is updated. This prevents cataloging errors and making sure subject headings remain searchable. And lastly, number four, by using scope notes, this allows to clarify subject boundaries and guide proper usage within cataloging. Now for my next slide, I wanted to dive in from the changes from the Library of Congress subject headings to the children's and young adults cataloging. After 2021, authority records are solely with CYAC. I have provided an example below which shows the original format. As you can see, creatures, mythical is now mythical creatures. According to the Library of Congress Introduction to Children's Subject Headings, CYAC distinguishes itself through a variety of ways, such as the deletion of the words such as children's or juvenile along with subject headings, using natural language and using common names rather than scientific. I provided the visual aid below, which shows the original examples such as songs, children, stories, children's, games, children's, and literature, juvenile. As for the children's subject heading, it has more child-friendly examples such as just saying songs, stories, games, and literature. Now on to my next topic, which involves the impacts of cataloging. Zavalin pointed out in a study of biographic metadata involved with CYAC that genreification has become a key part within school libraries because of accessibility to patrons, which is an addition that the study talked about, but also that these subject headings created by the CYAC have had a very positive impact on subject access to the patrons. According to the Library of Congress standard second subject headings for AYCAC records, heading pairings are used as a way allowing children to find records easier. This approach is important because of how children can come to looking for a subject in different ways. As you can see in the infographic on the right, I've included examples. The first example shows the specific heading versus the general, which makes sense because a child could come in searching for a specific book like the dodo bird, which is an extinct animal, for a project for their science class, or they could just come into the library looking for a generalized topic on birds. And some of the other examples I included provide the specifics such as middle schools versus general schools, or lift to flat books or versus general toy and movable books. Now I will turn it over to current issue after my takeaway slide. Children and subject headings are always changing, so as the needs of the patron will evolve as a society, some of the resources that can be utilized include a monthly list provided by the Library of Congress, which has the improved subject headings, and a database which provides authority records from the Library of Congress, which is free and accessible.
And now we will end the slideshow with the current issues with the children's subject headings list. So while the children's subject heading list was created to make cataloging more accessible and intuitive for young readers, there are still several ongoing issues that affect how well it actually works in practice. I'm going to focus on the main three areas, which are maintenance, representation, and usability. I'm going to start with the issue of maintenance. The CSH list only formally separated from the Library of Congress subject headings in 2021, so it means its authority structure is still in development. And because the CYAC program maintains its own subject headings, separate but related to the standard LCSH vocabulary, it can be very difficult to balance consistency and make sure that the vocabulary remains up to date with children's publishing trends, while still aligning with the cataloging standards. The CYAC monthly editorial meetings for CSH suggest active maintenance on a regular basis. The implications of this are the Library of Congress notes that work is ongoing to create complete hierarchies and usable references. So at the moment, not every heading is or has broader or related terms. Vocabulary maintenance is also very resource intensive, So the separation of CSH from the LCSH raises questions about duplication mapping and interoperability. The second issue is that of representation and inclusivity. Cataloging standards increasingly face questions about representation, bias, and equity. Children's literature is becoming far more diverse at a more rapid pace in both content and audience, but subject headings often lag behind cultural and social changes. The metadata for children's books may also fail to reflect diverse content or user communities. For example, a recent study on picture book subject metadata found that LGBTQIA plus themes may be an underrepresented or mislabeled terminology. Researchers like Andrew Ainch have shown that libraries are reviewing subject heading systems to improve on inclusivity and remove outdated terminology. And for the CSH list, that means a need for regular updates and community input to ensure that the language reflects all children's experiences. The implications of this are the CYAC standard must not only maintain consistency, but it also needs to adapt to social change and terminology. Maintenance must consider revising subject headings to avoid stereotypes, outdated terminology, and ensure accurate representation. Finally is the issue of usability. CSH headings use simpler and more natural terms based on how children actually speak. For example, the differences between cars and trucks versus automobiles and transportation. This is great for younger children and for quick referencing for older children. However, because the system isn't fully developed or cross-linked for cross-reference, as LCSH is, some searches may not retrieve all relevant materials. So even though the intent is to make the catalogs more accessible for children, the structure can still limit discoverability. Children use natural and concrete languages like dogs, while controlled vocabularies use formal or hierarchical sophisticated terms like canines or domestic animals. This indicates a mismatch of language versus the patrons that use the engine. As previously mentioned, controlled vocabularies assume reading comprehension and conceptual sophistication beyond children's abilities. This suggests an overestimation of sophisticated language use. Traditional thesauri are also very slow to keep up with new media, trends in terminology, and online behaviors. So terms like YouTuber and Fortnite are often late entries or show up inconsistently, which indicates fragmentation. The implications of this are if children are not able to effectively or successfully use subject headings, they lose equitable access to information, particularly those with lower reading levels or non-native English speakers. So the key takeaways of the current issues are the children's subject heading list represents an important move toward user-centered cataloging. Needs continued maintenance, inclusivity, and technical refinement are necessary, and this reflects the larger challenge of keeping metadata relevant for real users. Overall, the children's subject heading list is a great example of a move toward user-centered cataloging, but it also shows how hard it is to keep the standards current and inclusive. For information professionals, it's a reminder that classification systems are never neutral, nor are they ever complete. They need constant attention to stay useful and fair.
And lastly, just something to consider, and please let us know what you all think in the comments below. So the CYAC program scope only encompasses English fiction and foreign language materials that were published in the United States. Do you believe that this causes cultural insensitivity from an American-centric bias due to the terminology that is used for subject headings in this classification system?